Hi guys, and welcome to Adventures Out There. I'm your host, Vanessa Clone, and today we're going to talk about the top 5 tips for maximum fun for your playing experience. So, I've seen a lot of tip videos where they're like, how to be the best player, how to not be a terrible player, etc., etc. And I have a lot of experience too at a variety of different gaming tables, from conventions to live action roleplay to running long term campaigns to being a player in long term campaigns. Our current D&D group has lasted 5, 6 years at least, and counting. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to shape your play experience so that everybody hopefully has the maximum amount of fun. Now that's not to say that like this is the end all be all, but this is just something based on my personal experiences with RPGs. So, whether it's we talked in the other video about how to find a role-playing game that's right for you. In this one, we're going to talk a little bit about how to try and, if everybody follows these 5 tips, you're probably going to end up with a really good game and a lot of everybody having a lot of fun. So, sorry, my shirt's broken. Here we go. Tip number 1, and this is they're in order of kind of, in my opinion, importance. Tip number 1, respect. This is manners maketh man. Respect is super important. Respect is the pillar of safety. Respect is the pillar of making everybody feel comfortable with everybody else. Super important. Respect is number 1. So what do I mean by respect? Well, I mean respect your fellow players by not talking over them when they are trying to speak, by giving them a turn to speak, by even making sure that the kind of player who is quiet and shy gets a chance to express themselves. That's respect number 1, respecting your fellow players. Respect number 2, respecting the DM's calls. Respecting that when the DM is talking, you should not be. You shouldn't be on your phone. You shouldn't be talking to your neighbor. You shouldn't be discussing what happened at the bar last night. When the DM is talking, when the DM is giving you story descriptions, you should be the person who is paying attention, who is listening, who is engaging in the story. Because ultimately, that's why you're there, right? Is to totally get in, jump in, engage in the story, be there. So also in the moment, when a game master or a storyteller, regardless of game, makes a rule call, if they say, okay, this is how this works, respect that and move on. Don't argue. If you have something that you want to show them or you think that it works a different way, bring it up after the game. In-game, during session, the final authority is the storyteller or the game master or the dungeon master, and what they say goes. So if they say something, it's really important to respect that. And that is what I have to say about rule number 1, respect. Which moves on to rule number 2, share. I know this is something that goes without saying, but sharing is really important in a collaborative storytelling game because you are playing with other characters, and your character might loot the treasure chest, or might loot the corpse of a fallen adversary, or might take items from what have you. Your character might be the one who got the secret whisper from the ghost of someone. And so share the loot, share the plot points, and it's what my character would do is not an excuse. Okay? There are different rules or different guidelines that you should adhere to when dealing with your party members versus how your character deals with everybody else. This is especially important if you're playing a character that is evil aligned or selfish, like neutral or selfish aligned. Out of character, having your character share with the party is really important for telling a cohesive story. And it helps make for the collaborative storytelling experience that a role-playing game is supposed to be. Fun and engaging and helpful for everyone. So sharing is important. Share the loot, share the treasure, share the plot, and most importantly, share the spotlight. There are always people, no matter where you go, who are very outgoing, very boisterous, very like talkative, super out there, and they will always be, generally speaking, one of the first ones to ask questions of the NPCs, to suggest new courses of actions for the plot, etc., etc., etc. It's important for you, if you are one of those people, which I tend to be, to step back and to let some of the other players, the other characters, have a moment in the spotlight. If you are coming at this from a storyteller perspective, as I discussed in one of my other videos, sometimes giving the shyer characters a little piece of personal plot can help bring them more into the group. Because it's a group activity, so we should all be engaging in it as a group. Ergo, tip number 2, sharing. So that's what I have to say about number 2. Number 3, focus. Your focus needs more focus. What do I mean by that? I'm not saying that you have to take every moment of the game super seriously. There's a balance there. What I am saying with regards to focus is that when you get to game, the purpose of playing is to play the game. So when you are at game, please, 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 pay attention. Pay attention to the story. Pay attention to the other characters. And if your character or you are not the focus right now, please remember rule number 2, sharing. So if someone else is the focus, step back and let them be. Watch, engage, and if for some reason you feel like you just can't because maybe your character's not supposed to be there and you don't want to have in character knowledge, etc., then pay attention to, you can pay attention to something else, but if you do so silently. Don't distract from the action that is going on. Also know what is happening. Pay attention to what is happening even if it's not your turn. Pay attention to and have your sheet ready to go. Know kind of what you want to do when your action does happen. And be prepared is involved also in focus. Please, in focusing on the game, make sure you know what your abilities do. If you're new to the game, and you can ask the game master to take time away from the game. So come early one night, stay late one night, maybe meet for coffee sometime, maybe have your meeting over Discord or FaceTime or something where you talk about the game and what things do and what your sheets, the numbers on your sheet mean and what each ability does and how it works together. Myself, I have trouble remembering a lot of how the math adds up, so I usually make myself like a little cheat card where I have like the numbers already written out on what my buffs and bonuses do under certain circumstances so that I can tell the DM right away when it comes to my turn. Makes combat rounds run smoother, things like that. So it's always good to focus on that aspect of the game. So that's tip number 3, focus. Tip number 4, tech at the table. This is a one that might be a little controversial. Some people, some DMs I've met, want no tech at the table. This is a pen and paper D&D session, and please go back to rule number 1, respect. What the DM says, go. If the DM says no tech at the table, this is a no tech at the table campaign. You need to respect that. If you're allowed to have tech at the table, please remember rule number 3, focus. Your focus while you're there should be on the game. So, if you're texting or having to keep in contact with whoever or what have you, please keep it to yourself. If you need to do something online while you're at the game, that's cool, but don't, like, haha, look at this cool video I saw on Facebook, because you were looking at Facebook while it wasn't your turn at the table, which is fine. Look at Facebook if you want to, but do not interrupt the game session to show someone your video. It's not fair to the other people at the table. It's not fair to the DM. It's disrespectful to what you're all there to do together. So don't, if you're involved in, if you want to search the internet or do what have you, because you already have planned out and what you're going to do next turn and you know what's happening, then please don't interrupt the game. It's disrespectful to your fellow players. It's disrespectful to the DM. It disobeys tip number 1, and tip number 2, because you're not sharing with your players because it's their turn to be in the spotlight and you're not sharing the spotlight. You're once again pulling it all back to you by being like, hey, look at this video. Not fair. So, tech at the table. Tech is wonderful. It has digital character sheets. There are all sorts of tricks and trips. I tend to keep my phone at the table personally because I have a app called Book of Many Things that has all my D&D spells on it, names the spells, whether they're concentration or not, how long they last, all the little actual text of each spell. So I keep that so that I don't have to have a million cards or have them constantly flipping through the book. I keep it there for expediency. But yeah, if Facebook is open, I try not to look at it. I do try to give the game my full attention while I'm there. I do my best. And I hope the rest of you do too, because it's good. So now that we move to number 5, balance of out of character time. So this is a tip for me because sometimes you have different levels of game investment in your play group, because it's also a board game, right? It's a tabletop RPG, but it's also a board game, and we're all getting together and we're seeing our friends and it's super fun and social. I find that in my sessions, if my players are watching, now that you know that I do this, don't come late. But I will schedule game to start. If I want game to start at 7:30, I will schedule game for 7. Why? Because I like to give about a half an hour grace period for people to come in, get set up, talk about their week, talk about their day. I like to schedule in a little bit of social time, because we're friends, right? Sometimes for some people who are really busy with work and kids and all sorts of other things, sometimes D&D time is the only time that they are away from everything else. Because D&D is a fantasy game, RPGs are all escapist games where you get to be someone else for a while. You get to do really cool things. You get to engage and immerse in a really awesome story. Why would you ever bring the real world with you? Don't do it. A way for those who seek to find a way to leave their world behind. That is RPGs in a nutshell. So, what you need to remember is if you have people at your game table who have a tendency to want to break out into the social aspect more often than not, try and schedule some time where you can do that. like, because your average RPG game time session is usually between 3 to 5 hours, usually. When I do Tales of Equestria with kids, it's a lot shorter because kids, their attention span will not handle 3 to 5 hours. It's more, for Tales of Equestria, it's more like 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. So if I was running it for adults, I could do the normal 3 to 5 hours, but running it for kids, it's a little shorter. So there you go. And we'll talk about planning out adventures with time constraints in another video. But right now we're balancing out of character time. So if you have a group that has a lot of like to be social, but you still want to not interrupt the immersion of the game. So immersion is sort of a theater term. It means basically when you're playing, your head is imagining the game world. Your head is in your character's headspace. You're engaging in this imaginary landscape that is before you, imaginary storyscape. So when you do that, it's important to let it happen. Let yourself be in your character's headspace. Let yourself be imagining things as the game master describes them and unfolds the story and unfolds the events and describes the room that you're standing in, or the hallway with the fireball traps, or getting your flesh singed by the fireball as you unleash the trap, or getting chomped down on by the dragon as it bites off your leg. There's lots of cool descriptors that the DM will bring to you, and as such, it's important to focus and to respect what the DM is saying and to pay attention to those things. But game time is also social time. So one of the ways that might be good for you to help solve that problem is to have, schedule early. Like I schedule in like the half hour of social time at the beginning of game, and then we do a little bit of a 15-minute at the end of game where we go around the table and say what we liked about game, and we talk and chat a little bit. If you find that your players aren't able to last the full game time staying immersed, you could, if you felt like it, in the middle of game, or when it appears appropriate for the story, like when the party's taking a short rest or a long rest or something like that, you can say, okay guys, 10-minute intermission, be social. And then people they still have the opportunity. But if you schedule it, then you're good. I know for some of the live action roleplay games that I play, they have a out of character designated space. So if you want to go be social out of character, you go to that out of character space. And the rest of the space is in character space. So if you want to do an out of character space, go there. Otherwise, please respect other people's immersion and experience. So those are my 5 tips for maximum fun. I hope that they made some sense to you and that you enjoyed listening to me talk for like 20 minutes. But I hope that they help you be a good player, run a better game. And don't worry if sometimes you find yourself not being the best you can be. All of us make mistakes sometimes. So be kind to yourself too. I guess that's the bonus tip. That's number 6. Be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to the other players. If you notice yourself doing something, then just fix it for next time. Progression is sort of awesome like that. No need to be upset. It just keep going. So I hope that you guys enjoy the tips. I hope that you find them useful, and I'll see you next time. Remember, adventure is out there. Cheers.